thank you to FCNL and all of the advocacy teams around the country. Let me just say what a big difference you make, what a difference you made on the advocacy on this stopping the war in Iran. We were, as you remember, at the brink of war. Had Bolton pushing for war. Trump had almost authorized strikes and then reversed himself. And so when we acted to pass the No War with Iran Act, to get Alyssa Slotkin's bill through, to get Tim Kaine's bill through the Senate, it made a huge difference in stopping a rush to war. And you were at the front lines. It would not have happened but for your mobilization, going to every member of Congress, saying that this was a priority, going to people and saying we have to get on these bills and get it passed. So you have made a difference, and we've collectively made a difference, not just on stopping war with Iran, but on Yemen and the War Powers Resolution. And we're going to try to get that passed in the first couple of weeks once President Biden is after his inauguration. Because as you know, the Yemen situation is horrific. Kate Gold, who's been terrific on my team, was just telling me earlier today that there is a possible famine there. We have months to act because the blockade is still going on. The bombs are still falling. The Saudis still are getting our spare parts and intelligence to have this brutal campaign. So we need to make sure that we stop any of the arms sales, any of the spare parts, any of the funding or intelligence sharing to the Saudis. And that's going to be an effort right in the beginning of the Biden administration. And I'm hopeful that we'll have a reversal of the policy on Yemen. So that's one place where we're going to see change. We need to continue to advocate for peace in the Korean Peninsula. And thank you for your advocacy for my resolution on having a formal peace agreement and moving past the armistice. We will reintroduce that, and I'm hopeful that we can get a vote on that and that passed through the House this time. We need to be vigilant on making sure we don't have a bloated military budget with this overseas contingency fund, which is basically a discretionary slush fund for overseas entanglements and overseas incursions. So once I'm on, as you know, I'm on the Armed Services Committee, and I will look forward to working with all of you to stop that kind of rush to bloated military budgets, now over 50% of our discretionary budget. We need to make sure we're getting out of Afghanistan. I know Trump he keeps saying it every year, but nothing has changed. But once President Biden is there, let's work on getting out responsibly and making sure that we're not getting into other wars overseas, that the trillions of dollars that have been spent for that will now be invested in the education and health of our own people. But I am optimistic that President Biden will understand the costs of these wars, that he will understand the need to engage on with Barbara Lee on repealing this broad authorization of military force so that we can have greater restraint in our foreign policy, so that we are guided by human rights work. And I will look forward to working with the FCNL teams, certainly in San Jose, in my district. Thank you for the incredible work you do and your meetings and across this country. This is our chance to have a more just foreign policy, to stop these bad wars, to prioritize human rights. I want to thank you for all that you're doing, and I'm committed to closely working with you in these next 100 days so we can get the administration off to a good start.
Congressman, thank you for those opening remarks. And, you know, one of the things that you have championed as well is, when you can, working in a bipartisan way on some of these bills that you co-sponsored with Republicans. What do you see as the opportunities in the coming year to continue to try to expand the congressional coalition that works against these wars?
Well, I think that you have a number of people on the Republican side. Most famously, I've worked with Matt Gaetz and Mark Meadows and a number of others who don't believe we should be in these wars overseas, who believe that we're stronger and more secure by exercising restraint. And so I think there is opportunity for these coalitions. But restraint doesn't mean isolationism. Restraint still requires us to invest in people overseas and tackling climate change and tackling pandemics and tackling global poverty, in fulfilling our responsibility to people in Yemen. It's going to require $2 billion to prevent a mass famine. So what we have to do, I think, is have restrained in military engagement, but really extend humanitarian concerns and work cooperatively with other countries on the big challenges facing us.
You mentioned that you expect a vote in the first couple of weeks of the new administration on a War Powers Yemen resolution. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, we're planning for that. That's my hope, that we can quickly, given the catastrophe there, we can quickly pass it in the House and Senate. We have the votes as we've done before, and the Vice President Biden has said he would sign it. So that really should be our game plan.
Do you have any indication from the Biden administration whether they would also support some of the other issues that you've championed, like repealing the authorizations for the use of military force?
I think they would. They've said that, and Barbara Lee's, of course, has that bill in our House. But I think that the challenge has always been coming up with an alternative, which still gives some authorization and with appropriate sunsets. And my hope is that we can engage the administration in coming up with an appropriate alternative.
Great. Well, I know that you've got a busy evening ahead of you, but I wonder, for all of us, some of this work feels like it goes on, and it's hard to measure progress. And these are difficult issues. Congressman, I wonder if you could share with us what keeps you going in this work personally? What helps you stay engaged in the work that you champion so much for all of us?
Well, I appreciate what keeps all of you engaged. I mean, you've made a big difference. I wouldn't discount the impact you've had. It's been a sea change, even in the 4 years I've been in Congress, in terms of recognition of the human catastrophe in Yemen, a recognition of the interventions that are not working, a recognition that we need more restraint. This is a emerging consensus on the left and the right. And that change has happened because of the advocacy of groups like yours. I have, of course, been inspired by my grandfather, who spent 4 years in jail in India's independence movement and 15 years of his life in the Indian independence movement. And so when I look at the sacrifice of people like him, and we all have people in our lives who have sacrificed so much for the freedoms we enjoy, then a political fight for a more just human rights policy seems not as difficult in comparison. And so we need to have the perseverance that so many people of previous generations did to do our part to fight for a more just world.
Well, I want to say thank you, Congressman, on behalf of all of us who are on this call, for joining us tonight. It's an inspiration as always, and we look forward to working with you and Kate and all of the folks on your team in the next year to make more progress, and hopefully
I look forward to it too. And thank you very much for your leadership, for all of the group's leaderships, and I look forward to having Kate, of course, Gold on our team, and Gio Sava work closely with you in our priorities.